It doesn't stop being average. It begins to be elite when you can cross the line. Today is that kind of day. You can feel it. You can sense it. But God said my body is sore. My mind is hurting. So I'm going to shut down today. We got a chance to do one thing that every team in the country can't do. We got a chance to step up, man. We got a chance to step on the ledge, you know what I mean? And to me, I think it's a free fall. To be elite, you got to take a free fall. That means you can't be afraid to go to the edge. And coach said jump. You said how far, coach? Where you want me to go? Every guy got a chance to do that today. If you're elite, grab somebody today. Take him with you. There's no more average in this program. There's no more average in this program.
The Iowa Hawkeyes let go of the son of the head coach, Brian Ferentz, as the offense coordinator. So will this offense really improve with these changes that they have made? We know that Phil Parker is still there on defense. We expect for that defense to keep playing well. Hi, everybody. I am Colin Bashnagel. You can find me on TikTok at BashCFB Show. You can also find me on Twitter or X, Bash_CFB, BashCFB on Facebook, and finally Bash_CFB on Twitch. If you want to join the live streams, I could talk to you pre-show and after the show, and you get to see the show taped live. So if I mess it up like I messed up this video, you get to see it twice. That's the fun part, right? We're going to talk about what Iowa lost and what they're bringing back from last year. They didn't add anything in the portal, but otherwise I would be talking about that. And also what they're going to do in 2024. They made the Big Ten championship last year with a 10-2 regular season, lost the bowl game, lost the final game of the year as well, or the conference championship game. It's going to be a fun one for sure. Now, them losing or beating Nebraska at the end of the year, closing it out with the Big Ten West crown, it was definitely a good year for Iowa football, and I think Iowa fans will definitely agree that it was a pretty solid year for them. However, when you're talking about Iowa's standard, I think that a lot of people do definitely think that the offense, though, tough, hard-nosed, smash-mouth football is definitely their identity. I think they've kind of lost that identity a little bit, and they're not cute. They are the ugliest offense in Power 5 the last couple of years. So as we transition the Big Ten over and add those West Coast teams, is Iowa ready to take that next step on offense? We're going to talk about that a lot. So let's start with talking about the roster movement, and Tim Lester comes in as the offensive coordinator. We'll see how he calls plays for guys like LaShawn Williams, and they're going to have a full offensive line back as well with guys like, the interior with DeJong, Colby, and Jones, all back on the interior, tackles, Dunker and Richmond with both experience. They did not, get Caden Proctor the way that Iowa fans were really thinking, and that's going to be a future NFL player in a couple of years. So that's kind of sad for Iowa fans, especially a homegrown kid. He ended up deciding to go back to Alabama. That was the only transfer portal movement that they had coming towards them, and it ended up going away from them at the end. Other offensive weapons that they have, Caleb Brown is back at wide receiver. Luke Lachey, probably one of the better tight ends in America. And, of course, the quarterback, Kate McNamara, is going to be back. On the defensive side, I think there's definitely a little bit you got to replace, but for the most part, key departures, not really a big factor on that defense outside of Cooper DeJean. They did also lose Logan Lee, so that's definitely something that they got to replace on the interior. But with a guy like Yahya Black, he's going to be a good player for you for sure out there at Iowa. Nick Jackson and Jay Higgins are the two linebackers that are definitely going to headline. I think the secondary headline by Xavier Nwakpa, taking that big third-year leap, a big-time recruit out of high school. I think that's going to be a good role for him. The big question is going to be, how does Deshaun Lee really kind of replace Cooper DeJean? He doesn't necessarily have to, because you do have Quinn Scholl in the secondary as well with Nwakpa and another cornerback that has experience in Jamari Harris. So I'm interested to see what this team looks like. Also, I'd be a fool to not bring up Torrey Taylor, the punter. Replacing him is going to be a challenge. This is one of the better punters in history over there in college football. Let's just keep it real. Like I mentioned earlier, and there's not much action out in the transfer portal, and there's no action in. Caden Proctor coming in and then leaving in the spring is the most action they got. And then like Spencer Petras started the game for them. He's gone. So overall, like Iowa, not losing a ton. We'll see how it all works out in the end. Let's go ahead and predict this schedule now. We're not going to waste any time. We're just going to get straight to it with the Iowa 2024 schedule predictions. We're going to start with a win over Illinois State. I think they're just going to overwhelm Illinois State. But with what Iowa State has coming back, pretty good offense, headlined by Rocco Beck. I think that Iowa State gets the win in Kinnick Stadium, though I think that's a coin toss 50-50. And I think Iowa does beat Troy. Troy's just not going to be the same team. If they are, I'm going to be a little bit surprised. But even if they are the same team, I don't think they beat Iowa in Kinnick Stadium. At Minnesota, I think that's going to be a loss for the Iowa Hawkeyes as well. But again, 50-50 toss-up. I'm a huge buyer of Max Brosmer and what he's got to bring to the table, upgrading in Minnesota at quarterback and what they're going to be able to do with Darius Taylor running the football. And I do think they're going to have a solid defense again. So I do think Minnesota could be a pretty solid team. I think Iowa and Minnesota are going to be very similar teams, and I'm excited to see that matchup. At Ohio State, off of a bye, I think they have the capability of giving Ohio State a little bit of fits, especially with the schedule dynamics on the Ohio State side of things. But Ohio State's going to overwhelm them with talent, as Michigan and Ohio State specifically, and Penn State last year too, have in past years. I'm going to go with the Buckeyes. And then they're going to beat Washington. So after a 2-3 start, they go 3-3 with a win against Washington, a new addition. I definitely think that this is another 50-50 that I'm going to give the nod to Iowa. The fact that Washington has a new coach in Jed Fish, bringing in a lot of transfers. You know, they've done a lot in the portal, but I'm not sure if it's going to be enough for them to have success in the Big Ten. And sorry for that typo there, man. I had a couple of typos here. The lack of space with Ohio State and the Washington. But it's Washington. I think Iowa wins that game, though, at home. Gives them a little bit of a wake-up call to what the physicality is going to be like in the trenches in the Big Ten. Then you get at Michigan State and Northwestern. I think they're both wins. Look, just like I talked about in the Boston College video, Michigan State is a big old mystery. We don't know what they're going to look like. They could be a lot of fun, an immediate hit in Jonathan Smith's first year. I got to see it to believe it with them. And then Northwestern, while I like what David Braun's doing, I think they're a less talented version of what Iowa's trying to do. I think that Northwestern is going to be a solid program going forward, even with all the stuff that happened last year with Pat Fitzgerald. Making a bowl game was fantastic, and David Braun deserved a lot of love, but I don't think he's going to be able to get it done in Kinnick Stadium. Then Wisconsin, another 50-50, kind of like Michigan State, kind of like Washington. There's a ton of 50-50s. I'm going the other way with this. I think Wisconsin's a more talented team. They bring back a lot, and the biggest key for Wisconsin is how does Phil Longo and Tyler Van Dyke really mesh. We're going to talk about that when we talk about Wisconsin, but for now, I'm going to give Wisconsin the nod in that November game in Kinnick Stadium. And then finally, we close out the season. At this point, they are 5-4, but they get 2 straight wins to get bowl eligible, and 7-4 against UCLA and Maryland. I think they win both these road games. UCLA, a Friday night on the road, could be tough, but UCLA is an absolute mess. Not much of a home field advantage, and Iowa does get a break right after. So I think Iowa is definitely going to be able to, though they might struggle through this game, get a survival with good defense on the road at UCLA. And then with a long time period off to prepare for Mike Loxley's offense, and with Maryland possibly taking a step down, I got Iowa winning that game as well, improving to 7-4. But then losing to Nebraska. Listen, Nebraska has let this game get away from them too often, and last year was not an exception to that rule. I don't think that Matt Rule, pun not intended, but there you go. I think that rule that Nebraska has been kind of flopping in that Iowa game and kind of letting that slide through their fingers, slip through their fingers. I think Matt Rule's going to have a lot of intensity towards that game, and Nebraska's probably going to be playing their best football at this point. I get it's in Kinnick Stadium, and you never know about weather. I'm taking Nebraska because I think they're going to be the better team at that point in the season. But again, another 50-50 toss-up. There's a lot of them for the Iowa Hawkeyes. Overall, I got them going 7-5, 5-4 in the Big Ten. A big step down for the Big Ten runner-ups from a year ago, but the schedule's a little bit tougher. They're out-of-conference rival Iowa State. They have experience, and they're going to be a really solid squad. I think it's a lot tougher of a road for Iowa this year to be able to get back to a 10-win team. And finally, too, with the rule changes or the conference breakdown changes, with there being no divisions, it's going to be a lot harder for Iowa to get in there. I believe out of all the times that they have been able to get to a Big Ten championship, I think 2015 would have been the only year that probably would have stood as one of the top two teams, which they went undefeated in the regular season. And you had an 11-1 Iowa team back in 2002 that ended up going 8-0 in conference play, with that lone loss being, of course, this who was it? Was it Seneca Wallace in Iowa State? I don't know. I was still in diapers. So that being said, thank you guys for tuning in. Like I said, check out all of my social media and comment down below what you think Iowa's going to do in 2024. Let me know what team you want to hear about next. Thank you guys for tuning in. Have a great rest of your day. I'll see you next time.